You made me think of this progress narrative that we've been given,
Oh,
that if you're really materialist in your thinking, things are just getting better and better and better. We have more stuff. Everybody has a bigger flat screen TV. They often point to metrics like life expectancy is longer, child infant mortality is lower. Look at all our pharmaceuticals, look at our health industry, look at how much food people have. And they say that's a progress narrative. Is that progress narrative a lie?
yeah. I mean, that's such a good question. That's literally the subject of my next book, and I'm deep into the research right now. I think the only honest answer, and I actually had this conversation with Daniel Schmachtenberger several years ago. It just hasn't, the foundational conditions are the same, which is that for most of us right now, it's bafflingly confusing to figure out kind of quote unquote what's really going on. Because when you do see Hans Rosling or Steven Pinker or, pick your favorite TED talk, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the most peaceful we've ever been. This is the most people living above the poverty line. This is, just the litany of public health statistics that are suggesting this is the best of times. And then you end up either on an environmental channel or just doom scrolling your newsfeed, and you become very quickly convinced, oh no, we are going off the cliff with no skid marks, to our doom, and we probably deserve it. Like, look how many dumb, terrible, stupid ass things we're doing. We deserve what's coming. And so things are getting exponentially worse and getting exponentially better at precisely the same moment. And oh, by the way, this super advanced techno-industrial society with pronounced civil liberties and incredible hypermobility and access to the world's information, is also the very same container that is allowing us to do all these personal growth and healing and waking up experiences, right? And so you wake up and then you're like, oh my God, wait, when did I wake up? I woke up now in this moment. I mean, I had that experience going skiing in Colorado a few years ago, and it was for spring skiing, and we were rolling into town, and everything was melting, right? And it was early, like it felt like May, and it was actually mid-March. And there was muddy waters down the streets, and there was grass and straw showing around, and there we are riding this lift, and they just, having lived most of our life in Colorado and knowing the history of the ski industry, you're like, holy shit. So I'm riding this lift and I'm watching everything melt around us and being like, I don't know how much longer the ski industry is going to be a thing. And then thinking, wow, this ski industry was the direct byproduct of the military industrial complex. The 10th Mountain Division had trained just over the hills from us. They went to Italy, fought in the Alps. They all came back from the Alps, started Vail, started Aspen, started Sun Valley. Right, the skis and snowboards we ski on have advanced petrochemical PTEX bases that are super slidey with metal edges and all these things with flex patterns and all this kind of stuff. The lifts and all the steel and all the things. Right, the very techno-industrial warmongering society that made this possible, of like little monkeys sliding down white stuff in the mountains for fun, is also the very thing that's also melting this planet's atmosphere. Right? And so that was just a tiny example of what we're experiencing globally and at scale right now, which is that our awareness has gone through the roof. At the same time that what we need to be paying attention to or be made aware of is that the very same culture that has birthed us is also threatening to kill us. And most people can't hold that cognitive dissonance. So we toggle between the coming alive arc of like, what's the infinite, what's my hashtag best life? What's my optimum personal growth? Where do I want to go? Who do I want to be? Unlimited possibilities. And then also societally, what is a world where any gender is welcome? What is a world of post-racial equality? What is a realm where the bottom 4 billion of the global South have equity and inclusion, and we've made reparations for all the dirty deeds of the last 500 years, etc. Right? So that's the coming alive arc, and it's not time bound and it's not resource dependent. It's a sort of an infinite, open, what's the best thing we can possibly imagine and live into, and then that gets clipped by the staying alive arc, which is very time bound and very resource constrained. And it's like, oh shit, should I have my money in fiat or crypto? Should I get a golden passport in Portugal, or maybe I've heard that St. Kitts is dishing them out, or do I need to get down to Mexico, or do I hunker down in the US, or do I flee to Canada, right? Or those kinds of things, or like, what do we do, right, with the best places on the maps? I mean, a buddy of ours was an SVP at Google who got super freaked out during, I think it was the 2018 California fires. Or maybe it was later than that, actually, because it was during COVID. It was that super dystopian situation where families were like fleeing San Francisco to get to Tahoe, where they could see sky and their kids could breathe again in the midst of a pandemic with masks on. You're like, oh my gosh, this is bleak, right? That wigged him out to the point where he's like, okay, California's off my list. I'm moving my family somewhere to be safe. And he did all the research, being an engineering quantity guy with the world's best search engines at his fingertips, and he concluded that Lahaina, Maui was the safe place on an island in the middle of the Pacific in a tropical rainforest, and that's where he was going to post up. And he got clipped, right, with the Lahaina fires, which, kind of reminds me of there's again an old Greek story of someone going to the oracle at Delphi and being told, tomorrow you will die. And he flees Athens for Sparta. He's like, oh, fuck that noise, I'm getting out of Dodge. And then runs into the Reaper in a crowd in Sparta. And he's shocked. And he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I was waiting for you. So that notion for all of us these days that there is no way. And it's on us to pick our spot to make our stand, and then get on with living through this, feels like an important part of how do we reconcile that impossible contradiction if things are exponentially better and worse at the same time, and where do I even map that? Right? I mean, if you've heard, in fact, I guess people have heard of it because it's called the three body problem. Isn't that the new HBO show, right, with the Game of Thrones guys? I think it is. But anyway, the three body problem refers to, in astronomy/physics, it's very, very hard to map and model. It's one thing to map like the moon going around the Earth, but when you throw in the sun and the moon and the Earth and where all things are in relationships to each other, it gets hurdy-gurdy in a hurry. And we've got an 8 billion body problem, all agentic little egos bouncing around each other. So how on earth we map them leads to cognitive shorting out, leads to emotional, psychological overwhelm, and leads to boatloads of grief as we potentially run all the traps, run the numbers, and come to the conclusion that the world as we have known it might not actually be as stable or foreordained or given or even, predictably carrying forwards as we might have been, as we might have thought, as we might have hoped, as we might have been led to believe. So how do we grieve in all of this? Also, in a healthy way, in a powerful way, in a way that leaves us cleansed and grounded and stronger and wiser, versus in a way that leaves us kicking and screaming and embittered and feeling victimized. Feels like a super important part of what life might look like going forward, or kind of part of our immune systems that will be really helpful for us to develop.
Well, part of that progress narrative is that technology is going to save us, and that's going to be our get out of jail free card. Do you think that we could develop some technology that fixes all our problems?
Yeah, I mean, Mark Andreessen, right, of Andreessen Horowitz, infamously wrote the Techno Optimist Manifesto last year, and he was basically coming down hard on the side of technology progress. It has always been what got us out of the last pickle. It forever will be, and anybody who isn't for utterly unregulated, effective, the term that sort of showed up on Twitter is effective accelerationism, right? Instead of effective altruism, right? The idea of just like pin it. Let's put every penny and every calorie and every gigawatt we've got into general artificial intelligence, basically a silicon god, and that'll fix it. Which, if anybody's read the stories of Dr. Faustus or seen Fantasia with Mickey and the Sorcerer's Apprentice, or any countless tale where humans are tempted to go for ultimate power or knowledge, right? And they try and grab for that ring. There's not a single story where that one comes up roses. So there's a lot in our kind of mythical memory, as well as our historical memory, of, all we ever do is kick the can down the road to greater, more complex, wicked problems from solving our earlier ones.